Hello everyone, Jeff with the Green Review here. In the world of cool season bulbs, there are 3 seasons to spring: early, mid, and late spring. And each one is about 2 weeks long. The Dutch bulb growers classify their spring bulbs this way, and so do most catalogs. Unfortunately, many retail stores sell generic bulbs without much label information. When the Dutch growers say early, mid, and late spring, they're talking about April, early May, and late May. In planting zone 6, which covers much of the middle of North America, because that's the same hardiness zone that is in Holland. So if you're in a southern area, your spring starts a month to 6 weeks earlier, and northerners can see spring compressed into just May if the early spring weather stays cold. Blooming times are weather related and not calendar related, so don't be too concerned if the bulbs don't bloom exactly on time. Put some from each time period into your landscape for a longer lasting display. The colchicum, or colchicum, is the autumn or fall crocus. It's not a crocus though. And the corms produce leaves in the spring that die in the early summer. In the fall, the flowers burst forth in an amazing display. There are several species, including some with double flowers with a lot of petals. Even though the flowers may look like spring crocuses, the corms look nothing alike. The colchicums are much larger. The top 2 in this picture are the colchicum, and the bottom 4 are crocus. The 2 crocus on the left are discount store corms, and the large ones on the right are from colorblends.com. As spring crocus flowers begin to fade, colchicum leaves are coming up. Crocus corms are among the earliest spring bloomers, with snowdrops and a few others. They're very hardy in cold climates. They do well in flower beds, but they make a real impact when planted in the lawn. Spring crocuses look great spread out on the lawn. Mowing will need to be delayed if more flowers are desired in the following years. Few people know that there are fall blooming crocuses that are real true crocuses and not colchicums. Their leaves come up in the spring just like the spring crocuses, but the flowers don't come up until fall. Among the fall blooming species is Crocus sativus. The style, the female part of the flower, is harvested and used as the spice known as saffron. When you see how small it is and how hard it would be to harvest, you start to understand the high price. You can grow your own, and they're available from Brent and Becky's bulbs. The name Narcissus is the botanical name for all of the daffodils and jonquils. The American Daffodil Society says that unless you need to speak about a botanical matter, the name daffodil should be used. There are many kinds of daffodils. Some have very small flowers and need to be planted close to viewing areas or in containers to be used to their best extent. They are deer resistant, and they can be naturalized into wooded areas that have enough spring sunlight. They look best in mass plantings, so a group like this looks nicer than a few that are scattered along a sidewalk, for instance. Grape hyacinths provide a pretty blue in the spring garden. They send up leaves in the early fall. This habit allows the gardener to find them when planting or dividing perennials in the fall flower bed. Use a few of them around other bulbs to help find those other dormant bulbs in the fall. Hyacinths are very fragrant and often planted indoors. They can be planted outdoors, especially in side yards that are not used very much. This allows the flowers to be harvested and brought indoors as cut flowers. If they don't receive enough sun, they'll slowly die out over a few years and need to be replanted. Scilla, or squill, have blue flowers and grow well in naturalized areas and lawns under trees. There is a fall blooming species that looks nice with fall blooming cyclamens and colchicums. Snowdrops are one of the earliest blooming bulbs in the garden. They are often blooming a few days after the snow melts off, in February or March for a lot of people. Easter lilies are of course grown for Easter, but they can be planted in the garden for blooms in years to come. They bloom in midsummer in the garden. Species tulips that have not been hybridized very much last the longest in the North American landscape. The species Tulipa gregori has short stems. It blooms early. All of the varieties of that tulip have red or maroon spots and stripes on the leaves. Red Riding Hood is an old-time favorite red greggii tulip. The Kaufmannia tulips are also early blooming, short varieties. They have flowers that open wide each day and close at night. They're sometimes called water lily tulips because they look like water lily flowers, of course. The Fosteriana tulips are about a foot tall, about twice as tall as the first 2 groups. The large flower heads look like a turban. The word tulip is derived from the Persian word for turban. Some of the Fosteriana tulips have the emperor name, such as Red Emperor. The best hybrid tulips fall into the group called the Darwin hybrids. One of their original parents is Red Emperor. They grow to about 2 feet tall and bloom in mid to late spring, so in May. Appledorn is one of the most common red varieties, but there are a lot more. Two more groups that have lasted well for me are the multi-flowered tulips and the lily-flowered tulips. My favorite tulips are the multi-flowered tulips, since you get a whole bouquet just from one stem. They can have more than 5 flowers per bulb, and so it's really nice because tulips just one at a time are hard. If one of them dies out, then you're missing a big gap. Each flower opens up a slightly different time on the multi-flowered ones, so you get a longer season, especially when you're planted in mass. It lasts much longer, and the color fills in better than having them spaced around. They are early bloomers, and again only about 6 inches tall for the leaves. The lower flower stalk is good early in the spring when snows would break them all down. The lily-flowered tulips have long, skinny flower petals that curve outward at the top, giving them kind of an exotic look. They tend to be over 2 feet tall and bloom late in the spring. The extra height makes them really good for cut flowers. But it also lifts them up above other spring flowers that may be starting to be bloomed, and all the daylilies and peonies and things that are coming up at that point, so they bloom above that. This is really nice. They do really good when they're planted among hostas. The flowers are above the new hosta growth, and so that really works out well too. Eventually the hosta leaves, daylily leaves, peonies will cover up the old tulip leaves. So I like mixing tulips, even daffodils and the other bulbs that are early spring bloomers, with those longer lasting perennials, so that the summer leaves will cover up the dying leaves of the early spring bloomers. And this is Jeff with the Green Review. Thanks for watching.